My name is Nancy. There's a world out there I don't know about. I learned about it as a child, watching TV. Animals living in the wild, landscapes I've never seen before, and the lives of various people who speak different languages. Wanting to see this unknown world up close, I bravely studied abroad during my college years. There, in my destination, was the unknown world I sought. Even though the language was different, people's lives were thriving. There were many creatures, and breathtaking landscapes unfolded. I want others to experience this wonder too. Thinking that, I got a job at a travel agency. I was in charge of tour planning at my assigned department. Using what I learned during my study abroad, I handled everything from site inspections to negotiations. It was a whirlwind life, but I wasn't neglecting my personal life. I married Daniel, whom I met through work, a few years ago. I was balancing work and family life well. But then, a problem arose. It was with my mother-in-law, Barbara. Barbara, a housewife, believes women should stay at home after marriage. I don't deny her viewpoint. But I think such an idea is outdated. I told her so, but she said to me, "Isn't it a woman's job to support Daniel? Do you have a problem with that?" But, what? Talking back as Daniel's wife? No. Ultimately, Barbara didn't understand. I didn't want her to impose her views on me. I couldn't live with Barbara like this. So, I suggested buying a house to Daniel. I think people's view of us will change if we buy a house. Just saying that, Daniel easily agreed to buy a house. This is how I avoided living with Barbara. But, the story didn't end there. Once we bought the house, Barbara started coming over often. Every weekend, she'd come and make noise with Daniel. Of course, she didn't take care of her husband, Anthony. "Barbara, is it okay to leave Anthony alone? He's not a child. He'll manage." Wasn't supporting a husband a woman's job? I wanted to retort, but I could see it leading to a fight. So, I kept quiet. Then, Barbara, who had been noisy with Daniel, suddenly started a conversation. "I forgot to say, but I'm going on a trip next week. Please be careful." "What are you saying?" "Nancy, you're coming too." "Eh? But it's so sudden. You're not planning to join the family trip as Daniel's wife?" "But there's work too." "It's a family trip. Or are in-laws not family to you?" "That's not what I mean." "Then make it happen." "Yes." I couldn't talk back. But that was still the better part. Seeing me troubled, Barbara said in a mean tone, "And book the hotel." "Eh? I should?" Always bragging about working at a travel agency, right? "I'm not bragging." "So, you can do it, right?" "Where are we going?" "London." London, where I studied abroad. I still have many contacts there. It might be difficult for other countries or regions, but maybe I can manage London. "Okay. I'll try." "I have the plane tickets, so just book the hotel." "Eh? You booked the flight but not the hotel?" "I got the tickets." "Got them?" "I exchanged my card miles for first-class tickets." Barbara grinned. Judging by her joy, it seemed true. Then I noticed piles of branded goods on the sofa. "I see." I understood. Hearing first class, Daniel leaned in. "First class? Seriously, Mom?" "Yes, it's a first-class trip abroad." "Awesome. We leave at 9:30 p.m., so you can work till the last minute." Barbara was still grinning. It felt odd. But there's no point in lying about going on a trip. I have to properly book the hotel, or she'll complain. But it's so sudden, finding a hotel might not be easy. After some thought, I decided to use my old contacts from my study abroad days to get a hotel referral. I asked over the phone, "Can you do it?" For Nancy's request, "Sure. 4 people, 2 rooms." "Thank you." With that, I successfully booked the hotel. Then, on the day of the trip, it was such short notice that I couldn't take the day off, so I was working. Barbara had told me to meet at the airport at 6 p.m. So, if I wrap up work soon, I can make it. That's what I thought when suddenly, Barbara called. "Hello? Barbara? Nancy? Are you done with work? I'm just leaving the office now. So, I'll be at the airport after 6 p.m. "Oh, that's too bad." "Huh? Well, we're actually leaving at 6 p.m. "Eh? No way?" I hurried back to my desk. I searched the flight schedule on my computer. London. London. I found the 9:30 p.m. flight I initially heard about. But there was also a flight leaving after 6 p.m. Could it be this after 6 p.m. flight? Yes. So, the family is going without you. If you leave me behind, what about Anthony? You're supposed to be sick. I was furious. How could she plan so thoroughly to leave me out? Unforgivable. But showing my frustration would be playing into Barbara's hands. I had to hide my feelings, even if it meant putting on a brave face. I clenched my teeth and said to Barbara, "I'm the one who booked the hotel." "So?" "Daniel knows the hotel name. You can't do anything now." I could hear Barbara laughing on the other end. Annoyed, I said, "Go without me then." "That's better. We don't need a useless wife like you." "Useless? What do you mean?" "Don't you know?" "What?" "You neglect housework for your job. Daniel is complaining." "True, I'm busy with work. But I've never slacked off on housework. Why would Daniel complain?" "Can I speak to Daniel?" "Sure." "Nancy wants to talk." Barbara's mocking voice was followed by Daniel's. "Hello? What's up, Nancy?" "Daniel? What do you mean you're complaining about me?" "Just that. You're always at work and neglecting me." "Neglect? I prepare meals, clean, do laundry." "But you think you're doing it all yourself, right?" "That's not true." "Shouldn't you respect me more, listen to me, do things for me?" "Ha! I know a wife who supports her husband is valued. It's convenient for the husband. But that's not all there is to a marriage. I never badmouth Daniel in public, always praising him. But not when it's just the two of us. But we need to speak our minds when alone. Otherwise, our relationship would fall apart. And I'd become nothing but a servant to Daniel. Yet he kept complaining to me. "So you think you can act all high and mighty because you earn more?" "Not at all. Anyway, that annoys me." "And you're leaving me behind for that?" "Yeah, consider it stress relief. I'll bring you a souvenir, so don't worry." That's not the point. Clearly, Daniel was taking me for granted. If that's how it is, I have my own plans. "Fine. Enjoy your trip." "Will do. Bye." Daniel sounded happy as he hung up. I was livid. I couldn't stand the self-centered Daniel and Barbara. "Enjoy your trip without me. But be prepared, even if you come back crying and apologizing, I won't forgive you." I rushed out of the office with my mobile phone. "Hey, hello. It's Nancy, are you free? I need to talk about that hotel booking." With the trip canceled, I had plenty of time. I'll settle everything now. I ran around with that determination. Then, the next evening, exhausted, I got home and right then, the phone rang. Hello? Nancy. What were you thinking? It was Barbara on the phone, sounding quite angry. I knew the reason but pretended not to. Barbara? Are you enjoying the trip? This is no time for that. We can't check into the hotel. Did you have a reservation? You made the reservation, didn't you? I canceled it because I wasn't going. Ha! What? Then where are we supposed to stay tonight? I don't know. Nancy. Barbara's angry voice came through. But she's in London. Her anger over the phone isn't scary at all. That's tough. Being abroad without a hotel, you never know what might happen. Eh? It's not the safest place, you know. Wait. Help me. Barbara sounded panicked. Then, a faint voice in the background. There's a canceled room. Anthony is negotiating for us to stay there. It was Daniel's voice. Is that true, Daniel? Looks like it'll be fine. See, Nancy? You heard that? Barbara's voice turned triumphant, as if her earlier tears were a lie. I heard you. Too bad for you, Nancy. Your plan didn't work. Well, the room was available because I canceled it. But this was all part of my plan. My real aim was something else. Glad there was a vacancy. Thought you'd be smug about canceling our hotel, didn't you? No, not really. Frustrated, aren't you? You can admit it if you're upset. I just canceled it because I wasn't going. Putting on a brave face. How pathetic. Typical of Daniel's useless wife. Barbara laughed loudly. Then, she went on bragging. About the amazing scenery, delicious food, and so on. Eventually, tired of listening, I quietly hung up the phone. She probably didn't even notice. I smiled a little at the thought. Anyway, just a few more days to endure. I braced myself and had dinner. A few days later, on my way back from a certain place. As I headed to the station, Barbara called again. Hello? What's up? Nancy! What's going on? Again? Not again. What's wrong with this hotel? What are you talking about? Barbara's story, in short. They stayed in the room I canceled, thanks to Anthony's negotiation. Anthony's negotiations were easily concluded. Barbara and her friends were to stay in an open room. They were supposed to stay for 4 days. And check out today. But there was a problem. They were billed £8,000 by the hotel. So, what's the issue? It's £2,000 per night, right? Huh. That's about $2,500 per night in dollars. Ridiculous. It's for 2 rooms, right? So, about $1,200 per room? You told Daniel it was $300 per room per night. Yes, I did. So it should be $600 for 2 rooms. Why is it 4 times more? I was astonished. They stayed without even checking the room rates. Well, I anticipated this, so I set it up accordingly. Anyway, Barbara, making a fuss on the phone, must be bothering others. I should calm her down. Hey, Nancy! You hear me, Nancy? Barbara, can you be a bit quieter? Why did you lie? She's good at accusing others without reflecting on herself. Exasperated, I began to explain to Barbara. The $300 rate was because I made the reservation. Huh? So, because it was last minute, I asked a friend who runs a hotel. A friend? Yours? Yes. Their hotel offers rooms for around $600 for 2 people. Then why $1,200? That's the rate for a really nice room. My friend did me a favor.
Eh? A favor?
There were no other vacancies, so they arranged a nicer room.
So, is this the regular price?
Barbara sounded flustered. When I heard from Barbara, there was no time left for the trip. So, I told my friend any available room would do. The only vacancy was an expensive suite. My friend kindly gave a discount. Barbara left me behind without asking. I immediately told my friend the situation and got the room cancelled. But I couldn't just leave Barbara and the others without a hotel. So, I asked to accommodate them at the regular price if they came. I knew Barbara, having heard about the hotel from Daniel, wouldn't check the price. And I was right.
Come on! You should have said that.
Yelling won't help. Please make sure to pay.
We're not paying. Nancy, you pay.
But if you don't pay, you'll be arrested.
Arrested?
Of course. Troubles abroad can be messy. Are you okay with that? Barbara seemed at a loss for words. As I was about to hang up, thinking I had one, Barbara shouted,
Don't mess with me. You'll regret this when I get back.
That's fine, but we're strangers now, right?
Huh? Why?
Well, you said it was a family trip. So, since I'm not there, I'm not family, right?
That's different.
Before she could finish, Anthony's voice came from the phone. What's all this yelling about? Be quiet, it's embarrassing. Anthony? Seizing the opportunity, I called out to him. He noticed and responded. Nancy? Are you okay? How's your cold? I never had a cold in the first place.
What? Give me that.
It seemed Anthony took the phone from Barbara. His voice grew louder. Nancy, can you explain everything? I can. Actually, I told him everything from the beginning. His voice gradually lowered. I see. So, that's why you didn't come. I'm sorry. I wanted to go. No, Nancy, you're not at fault. It's Barbara and Daniel. From afar.
Eek!
I heard a whimper. Barbara and Daniel seemed frightened by Anthony's anger. Realizing this, an idea came to me. Should I tell Anthony what Barbara has been doing? I thought so. So I turned to Anthony. Anthony, can I tell you something? What is it? Barbara comes to our house almost every weekend. I know that. And she throws away receipts at our place. There are piles of them. What receipts? For brand goods. It's fine to buy a lot, but please dispose of the receipts at your place. Barbara wasn't just being noisy at our house. She was secretly buying brand goods and disposing of the receipts at our place to hide it from Anthony, thinking she wouldn't get caught this way. Of course, I'm a witness, so it's pointless. But it seemed Anthony didn't know. That's interesting to hear. Also, please tell her to stop bad-mouthing you at our place. She talks about me too? Yes. She says you don't earn much. Daniel, too. Calls him a useless dad, I think. Anything else? Well, so, I spilled all my pent-up frustrations to Anthony. Of course, some of it wasn't directly related to Anthony. But he listened silently. And at the end, he apologized to me. I'm sorry. Now I understand. Understand what? Why Barbara didn't want to use her card to pay for the hotel. Maybe. Probably because the cost was much higher than she expected, close to her credit limit.
I'm sorry.
That was Barbara's voice.
Unforgivable. All your wasteful spending, Barbara, I want a divorce. Please, don't do that.
Anthony's shouting was followed by Barbara's pitiful voice. He also yelled at Daniel.
Daniel, why don't you defend your wife?
Well, that's,
Don't come to my house anymore. Reflect on this alone.
Yes, sir. Daniel sounded unusually obedient. Probably he thought being banished from his parents' house wasn't a big deal. That's when I struck the final blow. So, Daniel, looks like you're going to live alone now.
Eh? What do you mean?
Suddenly, Daniel's voice got louder. He must have grabbed the phone. I moved my phone a bit away and told him the situation. Daniel, I want a divorce.
Eh? Divorce? You're joking, right?
No, I'm serious. I've already sold the house.
You sold it? Why would you do that without telling me? That's our house.
No, it's my house.
But I was paying the mortgage too.
No, you weren't.
What do you mean? I was giving you part of my salary every month. That was for living expenses. A few $100s isn't enough for the mortgage.
Daniel had been giving me a few $100s monthly. It helped with living expenses, but not enough for the mortgage. So, I paid it alone. The house was in my name. So there was no room for complaint. This incident made me decide to divorce Daniel. I sold the house, full of unpleasant memories of living with him. So, you'll be living alone.
Wait. Think it over.
No, it's decided. I'll contact you once I find a place. Then I'll send you the official notice.
Official notice?
Of course. I'll be claiming compensation in the divorce.
Wait for me.
Daniel was crying on the other end, but I didn't care. I hung up the phone. After that, Daniel and I divorced following discussions. Anthony actually divorced Barbara too. Barbara, due to her wasteful spending, didn't get any compensation in the divorce and was left on her own. I was just thrown out of the room. Daniel was nearly broke. Apparently having spent everything except the few $100s he gave me each month on frivolities. Now, he's living in a rundown apartment and commuting to work. But things might be better for Daniel than Barbara. With no house or money, and Daniel's place too small, Barbara had to take a live-in job. She's working hard from morning till night now. As for me, I'm doing great. Being single, I have more free time and can handle overseas negotiations. I've become a relied-upon figure at work, even hearing talks of a promotion to department head. Today, I'm busy flying around the world, planning new tour packages. Sarah's no good in the kitchen, right? She can't even serve a decent meal at home. The room's cold glares suddenly turned towards me. Seeing me like that, Kevin got even more carried away and started boasting loudly. Your cooking is terrible.
What? You've eaten my cooking? Aren't all your meals at your lover's place? What?
I raised my voice and publicly accused Kevin of cheating.
It's not a lie. I have proof right here.
I pointed to the documents Ronald was holding. My name is Sarah, I'm 35. I've always found the aggressive pushiness of men intimidating, almost scary, resulting in few romantic relationships and little experience with men. As I approached my 40s, my parents grew concerned and started suggesting introductions. Initially, I refused, but with few opportunities to meet men and feeling pressured by my parents, I began to feel a rush towards marriage and went through a few introductions. One of them was Kevin. Kevin was kind, serious, and worked as an elite employee in a top company. He was big both in height and build, but strangely, I never felt intimidated by him. Our talks about marriage went smoothly, and I even had a family meeting with Kevin's parents. His family owns a restaurant, and his father is a famous chef. His dad, Ronald, is regarded as a major figure in the culinary world, known for being quiet and strict. I naturally straightened up when I met him. On the other hand, Kevin's mother, Michelle, was gentle, with a soft demeanor that formed dimples when she smiled. Kevin and I decided to get married. My parents were thrilled about me marrying into a wealthy family. The condition for our marriage was that I become a housewife, so I quit my clerical job at an electronics manufacturer. Even then, my coworkers teased me endlessly about marrying rich. Looking back, that was probably the peak of my happiness. Kevin told me he couldn't come home often because of his busy job, but asked me to bear with it for a while. He planned to achieve certain results at his current company before quitting to help with the family business. I decided to support Kevin because I believed it was good to take responsibility at work. Years into our marriage, he hardly ever came home. I knew he wouldn't be able to come home often, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. I found myself waiting alone in the living room of our condominium. This condominium was provided by Kevin's parents when we got married. He's not coming home again today. I decided to support him because I believed it was good to take responsibility at work. He hardly ever comes home, let alone regularly, since we got married. He often travels for work, leaving the house empty for days. Dinners are almost always eaten out, and it's normal for Kevin to come home late. Despite coming home late, he leaves incredibly early in the morning. I worry if Kevin is getting enough sleep or eating properly. He often leaves for work without having breakfast. I once caught Kevin in the morning and asked him why he doesn't eat at home. He often travels for work, leaving the house empty for days. Kevin didn't even look at me as he tied his tie. It's okay. I'm just really busy with work right now. Don't worry about it, Sarah. With that, he would leave the house immediately. Even on weekends and holidays, he works from early morning till late at night, and often he's away on business trips. Initially, I thought Kevin was just being considerate by staying away from home. There was even a time when I thought it was cute, wondering if he was embarrassed. He didn't even look at me as he tied his tie. His belongings were minimal, only the bare necessities. Naturally, we hardly talked, so I knew nothing of his hobbies, likes, or dislikes. I wondered if it was my fault. I talked to my parents about it, but they said it's good for a man to be busy with work, not taking my concerns seriously. My few friends also think it's better for husbands to earn outside and not be at home. They even envy me, showing no concern for my worries. Kevin holds the purse strings, but he ensures the monthly living expenses are provided for, so there's no financial insecurity. This lack of insecurity, however, makes me anxious in reverse. I often blame myself, wondering if I did something to make him dislike me. I think about whether there's something wrong with me as a wife, meticulously cleaning and studying cooking to prepare delicious meals every day. Kevin tries to dispel my worries in the little time he has, seeing my anxious face.
Sarah, you're doing just fine.
I had convinced myself this was just another form of marriage, but then I got scolded by Ronald recently. I received a call from Ronald at the end of the year. I thought it unusual to get a call from Ronald, but then he yelled so suddenly that I dropped the phone.
Sarah, what kind of nerve do you have? Did something happen? Don't play dumb. Why haven't you been attending the family gatherings? Year after year.
I had never heard about these family gatherings before. I had discussed the Christmas party with Kevin before, and he told me the family doesn't gather because culinary people meet up for Christmas. He also said that when relatives do gather, the numbers become too large to manage. Usually, he goes to his parents' house with presents alone.
First of all, if you're not attending this year, Shouldn't you at least apologize for being unable to attend?
Ronald's stern voice made me freeze. It's been a Christmas tradition for me to stay home while he visits his parents alone. I've been careful with presents and messages, trying not to be rude. I had suggested calling at least, but Kevin said Christmas is incredibly busy, and I thought that must be true for someone prominent in the culinary world. But I was also afraid of meeting the intimidating Ronald. According to Ronald, the family gathers on December 24th for a party, and culinary people meet on December 25th. I could only apologize over the phone. He just berated me before hanging up. After the call, my mind was filled with questions. What did he mean by Sarah doesn't need to come? Why did he lie about there being no family gatherings? Did he go so far to prevent me from attending? That night, when the date changed, Kevin came home. Thinking it was now or never, I bravely asked him about the Christmas party.
Today, I got a call from Ronald. He scolded me for not attending the Christmas party.
Kevin sighed and answered reluctantly.
Going to a gathering with so many people can be intimidating. Plus, many wives dislike visiting their husband's family home. That's why I thought I was being considerate.
I was astonished by his misguided attempt at being considerate. Indeed, many people dislike visiting their spouse's family home. My friends also complained about not wanting to go. However, never going at all seemed absurd. Despite Kevin's reluctance, I insisted on attending the gathering. The Christmas party with Kevin's relatives was grand. A large number of relatives gathered, exchanging greetings.
So you finally showed up. Your family, after all. It's only natural to show your face here.
Ronald threw harsh words at me. Even after I explained that Kevin said there were no family gatherings, Ronald remained furious.
You must have been avoiding us because you didn't want to meet.
Overwhelmed by his anger, I gave up on arguing. The rest of the family also gave me cold looks. I supposed it couldn't be helped. I decided to endure it. What I couldn't bear, however, was Kevin's lack of support. Instead, he just quietly drank his alcohol. As everyone drank more, they started coming over to me to complain.
Kevin's always saying he's never seen you do any housework.
In my heart, I whispered, because Kevin hardly ever comes home.
You probably always eat out because you rarely cook and it's not tasty when you do.
The words coming from the relatives were all unfamiliar to me. What has Kevin been telling them? I couldn't understand why he was disparaging me.
I'm sorry. I'll be more careful from now on.
Faced with their harsh words, all I could do was stiffen up and apologize. I endured the painful situation, helping in the kitchen and serving drinks. After somehow finishing the greetings with the relatives and culinary professionals, I returned home exhausted. Kevin said he was going to work from his parents' house and left separately, just like when we arrived. Reflecting on it, everything seemed odd. In my heart, I whispered, because he hardly ever comes home. And why was he spreading that I'm a terrible wife who doesn't do housework? Is there a connection between him not coming home and these stories? Once I started worrying, I couldn't stop. Fortunately, I had plenty of time. I decided to follow Kevin's actions. Like detectives in movies often say, tailing. I followed Kevin early in the morning as he hurriedly left. Knowing his company, I had no trouble tailing him there. Feeling a bit like a detective excited me. It felt more fulfilling than spending the day doing nothing at home. I killed time in cafes and restaurants near his company, then followed Kevin when he went out. He returned to the company in the evening without any suspicious behavior. Continuing to watch from a cafe, Kevin left around 7 p.m. Perhaps he finished work unusually early today. If he went straight home, he would find out I had been out. I hurried home. Managing to get home before him, I rushed to prepare dinner and waited for him. However, he didn't return until after midnight. Feeling something was off, I decided to tail Kevin the next day too. Kevin's routine from morning to evening was the same: go to the company, leave for a bit, and return in the evening. The question was what happened after. Watching from a different restaurant, I saw him leaving the company around 6 p.m. Today, I decided to follow him directly. Instead of heading to the station to go home, he started walking in a different direction. I hesitated for a moment before continuing to follow. He walked towards a street with motels. Determined, I followed but eventually lost sight of him. As I was looking around, Kevin suddenly appeared in front of me. Both of us were surprised, staring at each other. He was the first to speak.
"Sarah, what are you doing here?"
I couldn't come up with a good excuse and stammered.
"To think you're here, what have you been doing all day?"
I was shocked. It was Kevin who should be under suspicion. Yet, I was the one being made to look suspicious.
"Anyway, go home. We'll talk there."
Embarrassed to be scolded by him in such a place, I hurried home. When Kevin came home late at night, he confronted me with something outrageous.
"Thinking you're bored at home, you tail your husband? Why should I support someone like that?"
I tried to object, albeit weakly.
"I do take care of the house." "Don't say you're doing housework just because you cleaned a bit. From now on, manage with $100 for living expenses."
I was speechless. How was I supposed to live on $100?
"The utility bills will be deducted from my account. And you won't have to spend on my food."
Kevin smirked maliciously.
"Then, at least let me work. Let me take a part-time job."
Embarrassed to be scolded by him in such a place, I hurried home.
"No, work full-time like me. And don't slack off on the housework."
Despite my objections, Kevin was adamant. Eventually, I had to return to my previous job at the electronics manufacturer to comply with his demands. I ended up doing all the housework while working. Suddenly, my life became incredibly busy. I couldn't play detective anymore, caught between work and housework. Since then, Kevin has been constantly finding fault with me, complaining about the housework. In the short time we see each other in the morning, he complains about dirty windows, dust in the entrance, or Uniron shirts before leaving. I have to do all these chores at night because I work too. As time went on, December arrived, and the Christmas party approached. Kevin, as usual, told me not to attend.
"You stay at home. You don't need to come to the gathering."
Arguing seemed pointless, so I remained silent. He left with a memorable remark.
"I can't show someone like you in front of my relatives. It would be embarrassing."
I was shocked by these harsh words. How could Kevin say such a thing? To say this to me, who works from morning till night and does all the housework. Anyway, I decided to attend the Christmas party without telling Kevin. And then, I had to make Ronald and Michelle understand the real him. I tightly gripped the thick envelope that had arrived earlier. On the day of the Christmas party, I went to Kevin's family home to participate. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Seeing me suddenly appear at the Christmas party, Kevin was surprised but, given the situation, could only glare at me without saying anything. The relatives' gaze towards me was as cold as ever. They whispered criticisms about me to each other. It was clear they were all being deceived by my husband. I didn't let it bother me. While enduring the cold stares, I stood in the kitchen, preparing and serving food and drinks. After a while, perhaps as the alcohol started to take effect, he began to loudly voice his criticisms of me.
"Sarah's useless even when she's in the kitchen. She can't even provide a decent meal at home."
All the cold glares turned towards me at once. Seeing me like that, Kevin got even more carried away and started boasting loudly. Her cooking is terrible. Ronald's stern gaze turned towards me.
What's the meaning of this? Are you not suitable to be Kevin's wife?
As Ronald raised his voice, all the relatives' gazes turned towards me. Just when everyone thought Ronald was about to start lecturing, I stood in front of Kevin and began to argue back.
What? Have you ever eaten my cooking? Aren't all your meals at your lover's place? What?
Ronald, caught off guard, was left with his mouth half open.
What are you starting now?
While everyone was in shock, only Kevin began to frantically make excuses.
Sarah, why tell such lies just because you're being spoken ill of?
Kevin turned back to Ronald, starting to make excuses.
Dad, I don't have a lover.
Is that so? Ronald seemed to want to believe him. He nodded more at his words than mine. Thinking he had regained Ronald's trust, Kevin began to retort with confidence.
Stop talking nonsense. You're really out of your mind.
I didn't just blurt out that Kevin had a lover on a whim. I took an envelope out of my bag and showed the documents inside to Ronald and others. Kevin kept harshly criticizing me without concern.
Hey, apologize now. Then I'll forgive you for lying.
The relatives probably believed Kevin didn't have a lover. They sent me harsh glares. Ronald and Michelle were earnestly reading the documents. The documents I handed over were the results of an investigation into Kevin's cheating. Because his actions were clearly suspicious, I had a detective agency take over and investigate thoroughly. The results from the detective agency confirmed Kevin was indeed guilty. The reason Kevin hadn't been coming home was because he was meeting with his lover. Most of his time was spent at his lover's house, sometimes even using motels, according to the report. He has always been eating at his lover's place. While I managed the living expenses with $100, worked full-time, and took care of all the household chores, he was enjoying his time with his lover. When I encountered him on the street with the motels, he was about to have a secret meeting with his lover in a motel. I raised my voice and publicly accused Kevin of cheating.
It's not a lie. I have the evidence right here.
I pointed to the documents Ronald was holding.
The condominium Kevin enters isn't ours.
Voices of skepticism rose from the relatives.
Is that true, Kevin?
What does this mean?
Is it fabricated?
Ronald and Michelle were poring over the documents as if trying to bore holes through them.
Kevin, is this true?
Kevin, with sweat on his forehead, desperately denied it.
No, that can't be. I don't have a lover.
Ronald and Michelle were engrossed in the photos. Photos of Kevin holding hands with an unfamiliar woman and entering an unfamiliar condominium. Photos of them choosing jewelry together in a jewelry store. Photos of them drinking wine at a stylish restaurant. Photos of them selecting groceries at a supermarket. In all of them, Kevin's careless smile is captured. I pressed him relentlessly.
Kevin, you said you were busy with overtime every day, right?
Kevin turned red and fell silent. My anger made me speak faster.
Why did you lie about not wanting to meet the relatives or about the cooking not being tasty? I didn't tell such lies.
Even at this point, he pretended not to know. This attitude deeply disappointed me. Everyone fell silent at the exchange between Kevin and me. Then, Michelle's loud voice filled the room.
Kevin! What are you doing?
Kevin was taken aback by Michelle's loud voice.
It's not like that.
Michelle, unlike her usual gentle demeanor, had her eyes narrowed in intense anger. Even I, who wasn't being scolded, became frightened.
What's different? Are you saying all this is fabricated?
Despite speaking calmly now, Michelle's tone was even more intimidating. The relatives, too, were silenced by Michelle's fervor.
The stuff about Sarah was all lies you told. Now explain yourself properly.
I've never seen Michelle angry, she's always smiling, but she's scariest when she's angry, the relatives whispered among themselves. Kevin, as if resigning himself, curled up and began to speak softly about the truth.
That woman, I'd been seeing her since before we were married, met her at a bar.
The relatives started murmuring. Ronald and Michelle were staring at him with stern faces.
I thought this family would never accept a woman from a bar as a wife.
Was Kevin crying? There were wet spots on the floor.
So, I thought I'd just marry any suitable woman and live with her at her place.
So, that suitable woman was me. Kevin apologized.
I'm sorry. You said you weren't interested in marriage, and I thought it would work out if I just provided money.
Then, a question came to my mind.
Then why did you speak ill of me to Ronald and Michelle?
Without those bad words, I wouldn't have been so suspicious.
I wanted her to be my real wife. I hated the idea of living with Sarah, who I don't even like. So, I wanted to divorce with you somehow. Do you realize how selfish you're being?
Kevin seemed to shrink even smaller.
I'm sorry. I was constantly told I wouldn't be considered a grown man until I got married, so I thought I just had to get married. And I thought once I was married, even if I got divorced, they wouldn't bother me about it anymore.
He assumed that once he was divorced, his parents wouldn't meddle in his remarriage. That way, he could focus on his relationship with his lover. All he needed was a pretext for divorce. It had to appear as though the fault lay with me, not him. That's why he had been speaking ill of me, trying to tarnish my reputation. Reducing the living expenses to $100 was because he didn't want me investigating his affair. If he only gave me $100, I wouldn't be able to afford an investigation, and working full-time would leave me no time to snoop. He hadn't anticipated that I would use a detective agency. Such short-sightedness led to Kevin having to apologize in front of the family.
Infidelity is the one thing you should never do. You betrayed Sarah, who has done so much for you.
Michelle's forehead was throbbing with veins. Her anger showed no signs of abating. Kevin was crying and sniffling.
Kevin, you are a disgrace to our family. We disown you.
The gathered relatives gasped. Probably, Michelle's word was absolute. Ronald nodded deeply in agreement. Kevin no longer had a place in this home. Exposed for his infidelity and lies in front of all the relatives, and further told by his own mother to sever ties, stood up shakily, wiped his tears, and left the room without a word. After Kevin left, Michelle came to me, apologized while holding my hand.
Sarah, I'm so sorry for the terrible things Kevin did.
Ronald apologized as well. I'm truly sorry. You're free to divorce him. Michelle continued to hold my hand with tears in her voice. I can't believe Kevin turned out like this. We were completely deceived as well.
I'm so sorry for yelling at you over things that weren't true, Sarah.
I had thought Ronald was a silent, always angry, stubborn person, but he quickly admitted his mistake and apologized, proving to be a good person. And it was clear that this home was held together by Michelle. Exposed for his infidelity and lies in front of all the relatives, and further told by his own mother to sever ties, he stood up shakily, wiped his tears, and left the room without a word. I reconciled with Ronald and Michelle. Soon after, my divorce from Kevin was finalized. In a way, the divorce was what he wanted. Disowned by his family for his affair, Kevin, without the support of his prestigious family, fell off the career track and worked in a lower position, humbled. Kevin's income significantly decreased, and he was dumped by his mistress, who had grown tired of him. I learned about these developments from Michelle at Kevin's family home. I received compensation from Kevin and his mistress. Especially from Kevin's family, I received an amount more than double the usual rate, probably including a request for discretion. With financial security, I now indulge in luxuries like overseas travel several times a year. I decided to continue living in the condominium prepared for our new home, as I liked, until I no longer preferred it. Since Kevin was hardly ever there, it felt free of his presence, and I lived comfortably. The one good thing that came out of his actions was returning to work. Being coerced back into employment by him, I now had an income and no worries about future living expenses. I occasionally keep in touch with Ronald and Michelle. I'm invited to the Christmas parties, but I decline that.